lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm doing like a little micro review on 3 books specifically about feminism and misogyny. Yes, I am wearing the same outfit as I have been in my previous 2. This is my like binge mini series on women in history. So we're gonna jump in. I've been filming so much today already. So like I said, I'm going to be talking about 3 books. One is like a macro look at misogyny, and then the other 2 are, in my eyes, looking kind of microcosms of particular instances of misogyny, where I think the first book would really inform your understanding of book 2 and book 3. So the first book is one that I finished relatively recently, and that is Down Girl, The Logic of Misogyny by Kate Manne. This is a fairly rigorous and highly academic book that is looking at misogyny as kind of a feature of a sexist and patriarchal society, which is using the concept of misogyny more as a moralistic, almost like police force to try and shame and punish women who dare to go against kind of the patriarchal rules that are in place. So it's really looking at misogyny being a particular type of behaviour that is directed towards women, or kind of women as even scapegoats for other women, that is designed to punish them and to try and elicit a change of behaviour. And the kind of the really aim of this book is to sort of articulate what is misogyny, what isn't misogyny, and how can we kind of define it in an epistemological sense so that we can kind of understand it and recognise it when we see it. It's looking at things like how you get what's called like himpathy, the book is arguing for, which is where sympathy for a man over the plight of a woman is favoured because they are kind of the more important one in this interaction. And it's using lots of very specific examples from kind of modern news stories to illustrate these particular sort of things it's talking about. Like I said, it's very academic in nature. I think it would be helpful if you've got a bit of feminist theory behind you, or indeed if you're just happy to sit down and Google a few terms. You know, I don't think you need necessarily a hugely strict, rigorous training to understand it, but it is not interested in doing kind of anecdotal stuff. It's really talking kind of rigorous, theoretical, macro-looking concepts. I loved it. I absolutely adored it. I listened to an audiobook and it was exactly what I was looking for in that moment. As much as I think that the books about individual instances of sexism and misogyny out there are important to kind of look at, the various books that talk about those, I think these big macro looks at sort of systemic stuff is equally as important, and this one is really incredible for looking at what do we mean when we use the term misogyny, what behaviour in the world are we describing, and it's a fantastic book. It just mind-blowing, eye-opening, etc, etc. But as I was reading it, I was thinking to myself like, these instances that she's talking about and these kind of various different applications, this is reminding me of things that I've read in other books, and I really wanted to kind of do this video to connect these. So if you've read Down Girl, or if you're really interested in this, I think you then should also read No Visible Bruises by Louise Snyder. And this is looking at domestic violence, and it's specifically looking at domestic violence perpetrated by men towards women, which is the majority of the domestic violence out there. And it's looking at kind of the situations where it can arise, the various things that we can do to help to support women, but also it's looking at kind of the middle section of it is really dedicated towards trying to have interventions with the men who perpetrate it, because if you just create situations where women can flee the domestic violence, all you're doing is you're leaving a vacuum open for a different woman who is vulnerable in that moment to be kind of sucked into that and to then become kind of the next victim. You really need to kind of treat this at the source rather than just providing support. It's incredibly detailed. At no point does it feel voyeuristic or kind of really relishing any of the violence, and it looks at the various kind of actual iterations of domestic violence rather than those that kind of get portrayed in the media. And it also had a really big section about strangling, and also domestic violence being something that then leads on to mass shootings, which was something that I thought was really important to kind of articulate, and the links between gun violence and domestic violence, specifically with America. This book is specifically America focused. All of its stats will be in America. It's something which every non-fiction book should limit its scope with what it's doing, especially when it's putting forward a particular argument. All of these books do limit their scope, and they kind of state that very early at the beginning. If you're not happy with the scope that they limit it to, you'll need to find a different book. I'm sorry, it's fair enough. So that one, No Visible Bruises, was a really incredible read, and I think really connected with some of the stuff that Down Girl was talking about in terms of the lashing out of a man against women, but also kind of the idea of women becoming placeholders for others, and when a woman of some sort somewhere manages to kind of push back against patriarchal ideals, how just the closest woman to a man can end up becoming the easy victim and kind of the scapegoat, and how often the role of the wife or the girlfriend can really suffer because of just what women are doing kind of at large in general. It also kind of talked about empathy and the idea of the man's story being more important, and then kind of the outrage that gets lashed out against when women dare to speak up. And that one really reminded me of She Said by Jodi, Kantor and Megan Twohey. This is looking specifically at the Harvey Weinstein situation, where Harvey Weinstein sexually assaulted a variety of different women involved in the like acting and movie industry, and the difficulty in terms of breaking that story, which then led to some of the Me Too movements that happened, the difficulty of getting women on record for it because of the fact that women are just often not believed, and also then the lashing out that occurred from both Harvey Weinstein and kind of Harvey Weinstein's entourage, lawyers, etc., at these two women who dared to question him. And then you also get the attachment of the Brett Kavanaugh, I think that was his name, thing at the end. Now, full confession, She Said, I didn't overly enjoy it as a reading experience. This is not really my kind of non-fiction in terms of like that investigative journalism. It's just not how I vibe with non-fiction. I much more prefer the kind of more heavily academic, theoretical down girl kind of a book. But I do think that this book really, when especially looked at in through the lens of down girl and kind of the concepts of misogyny more rigorously kind of analysed, so many of the actions and so many of the kind of things, this is a perfect little microcosm of exactly what the book is talking about. So in terms of sort of illustrating these different ideas, I think this book is absolutely fantastic for that. And it was definitely really interesting to have read No Visible Bruises in this, and then to keep thinking back to them whilst I was reading Down Girl. So I think that's it. Basically, I wanted to kind of recommend these books, and I think these books work really well collectively if you did want to do kind of a bit of a deep dive into specifically the concept of misogyny rather than just sort of feminism, sexism, etc. Really, really important books in their own rights, and really, really interesting. So do let me know what you think to these, and if you would like this style where I kind of pick a specific topic and I talk about like a macro and then a few little examples of it. I don't know if I could do this again with anything else on my shelf, but if you like it, let me know. This kind of like 3-book or sort of small book review type situation. Let me know and I'll see if I can find any more. And I thought that this was especially fitting to do given that it is Women in History Month. So yeah, that's the general vibe. Have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.